Have you ever heard meditators talk about this, or maybe you've even felt it yourself, that when you get into these really deep states of focus, the feeling of being a man or a woman just completely dissolves? It's a pretty wild and profound experience. So today, we're going to dive into exactly why that happens, using some really timeless wisdom to guide us.
Okay, so this is it. This is the central question we're going to try and unravel. What is going on here? Is it some kind of rejection of your identity? A weird psychological glitch? Or is it actually a clue, pointing to something way, way deeper about how our own minds work?
So first things first, if this has happened to you, trust me, you are not alone. This is actually a super common, even an expected thing that dedicated practitioners have reported for centuries all across the world. It's not some strange anomaly. It's really more of a signpost.
And that's the absolute key to how we're going to look at this. This isn't about making a social or political statement. Not at all. We're looking at this as a clue, a profound insight into the very operating system of our consciousness. The experience itself is like getting a direct glimpse under the hood at how the mind is actually built.
All right, so where do we even begin to unpack this? Well, the first big idea, which comes from Buddhist psychology, starts with making a really fundamental distinction: the difference between the mind and, well, the physical body. To really get a handle on this, there are two key terms we got to know. The first one is rupa. That basically refers to the physical body, the material form. You can think of it as anything that can be known. And the second is chitta. That's the mind, consciousness itself. It is the knower.
Okay, so here's where it all clicks together. The knower, the chitta, is at its core just formless awareness. It's the part of you that experiences everything. The known, the rupa, is your physical body. And that's the thing that has all the qualities, like height, weight, hair color, and yep, gender. So in this view, gender is a quality of the body, a label for the form, not some built-in feature of the awareness that knows that body.
Okay, that makes sense. Gender is a label for the body. But how does the mind, which is so incredibly used to identifying with that label, just stop? How does it stop seeing something that feels so fundamental to who we are? Well, it all comes down to the mechanics of deep focus. It's actually a pretty cool process. When you get into a state of really deep concentration, your mind becomes totally laser-focused on one single, very subtle thing, like the feeling of your breath. Now think about it. Concepts like man or woman are actually pretty coarse, mentally speaking. To even think them, you need memory, social context, comparison, a whole lot of mental baggage. A mind that's single-tasking with that much intensity just doesn't have the CPU power left over to process those big, complex, coarse ideas. And let's be super clear here. The idea of your gender isn't being erased from your brain. It's not destroyed or anything like that. It's simply not being called upon. The mental program that constantly runs your identity is just temporarily switched off because all the processing power is being used for something else. And, this isn't some new agey thing that just popped up recently. There's this amazing story from the ancient Buddhist scriptures, we're talking 2,500 years old, that illustrates this point perfectly. It's a conversation between a brilliant nun and a tempter. So the story goes, a nun named Bhikkhuni Soma is meditating, just completely absorbed. And the tempter, this symbolic figure named Mara, who represents all our doubt and distraction, shows up. He tries to knock her off her game by attacking her identity, basically taunting her. You're just a woman. How could you possibly figure out enlightenment? Now this is what is so brilliant about her response. She doesn't get into a big debate about gender equality. She doesn't argue that women are just as capable as men. She totally sidesteps the whole thing. She basically says, when the mind is this focused, when you're truly seeing things as they are, the labels woman and man just don't matter. They're irrelevant.
So Soma's incredible answer points to something even deeper than just making the label go quiet for a little while. And this brings us to a really critical difference. The difference between just concentrating and having a true, liberating insight.
Let's break this down, because it's a huge distinction. On one side, you've got concentration, or samatha. That's what makes the gender identity feel quiet. It's like putting it on mute. It's a temporary state, a peaceful break. But then you have insight, or vipassana, and this makes the gender identity feel transparent. This isn't temporary. It's a lasting wisdom that sees the label for exactly what it is.
Yeah, with insight, you don't just temporarily ignore the label, you actually see through it. You directly see that this identity, just like every other thought and feeling you have, is just a conditioned process.
It's something that arises because of certain causes, it's always changing, and it is definitely not some solid, permanent self at your core. So you gotta ask, what's the big deal? What's the point of all this? Why does seeing through identity in this way matter so much? What's the ultimate goal here?
The goal isn't to become some kind of genderless robot. Of course not. An enlightened person still has a physical body, and they can totally function in society using labels like man or woman. The huge difference is that their inner sense of self is no longer defined by or trapped by those labels. That deep, gripping feeling of, I am a man or I am a woman, has just dissolved. It's like you can use a map to find your way around town, but you don't for a second believe that you are the map.
And that brings us to this final thought, a really subtle but massive shift in perspective that kind of wraps this all up. The ultimate goal isn't about having the freedom of identity to be any identity you want. It's about having freedom from identity, the freedom from the basic need to be defined by any label at all. At the end of the day, that experience of no gender in meditation is a powerful sneak peek of this potential. It points toward a state of pure awareness that is so whole, so complete in and of itself, that it simply doesn't need to borrow an identity or a label to know that it exists. It just is. And that is a truly profound kind of freedom to think about.